Whether you're in academia, whether you're in business, whether you're a student or whether you're a professor, I would imagine that all of you are in hot pursuit of ideas. You're exploring ideas, you're hoping to discover ideas, but most importantly, you're going to need to translate those ideas into language in ways that ideally move people in some way. I've spent the last 25 years looking at some of the challenges that leaders have around communicating their ideas. And in 40 minutes, I'm going to compress it all, and I'm going to throw a bunch of stuff out to you and encourage you to take notes and definitely ask questions. Jump in at any point. If you're interested in knowing more about what we do and would like to come to a program, you can talk to me afterwards. But I'm going to really go pretty quickly here. So we use about 10,000 words a day. We probably have about 100 meetings in a given week. Some of those super important. But if you think about the conversations that we're having, the amount of language we're using, how often do we fail to even make a connection because we don't always have a strategy? Or the strategy that we have is faulty. And so what I'm going to do with you is share with you a way of thinking about communicating that for some of you will make sense. You'll say, this is what I've always done. For some of you will go, I should have thought of this 10 years ago. Because one of the biggest challenges that we all face is that most of us communicate in order to think. We're clarifying our ideas out loud. And what I want to suggest to you today is that communication is always in service of the other. It's always meant as a gift, unless you're talking to your therapist or your mother, and then you can talk all about yourself all you want. When communication is effective, it clarifies where there's confusion. It reassures where there's doubt. It creates certainty where there's fear. So the first thing I want to talk about is that quality of intention. And I'm not talking about the informal conversations that we have on a weekly basis bumping into people. I'm talking about the high-stakes situations where there's an opportunity to move the needle in some way. When you think about communication, it has three parts to it. It has three parts. The first is the content. The words, the way we've organized the words, the data, and how we've structured it or not structured it. Most people get stuck here, though. If I can get the idea right, if I can get my slides lined up, if I can get the facts straight, everything should be fine. But what we're discovering is that it's not enough. It's not enough in the last 20, 25 years, because I would suggest to you that the way we listen has dramatically shifted in the last 20 to 25 years. It used to be that when we spoke, it was primarily to give information. And I would suggest to you that it's now about crafting experiences that are both intellectual as well as emotional. And the two of these come together. If we're strictly communicating data or information, what's the most efficient way to do it? If I just have data. Thank you. Just send me the email. How many of you sat in meetings and said, why didn't you just send me the slides? Why did I have to sit through all of this? If it's strictly information, just send it to me. Send me the Excel. But if we're asking people to leave their desks, leave their homes, come to our office, come to the room, there has to be more than information. Because people will forget what you say, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So we want to look at the second part of that. And a lot of this comes through delivery, which is the second part of this triad. So there are the ideas, and then there's how do you cross the chasm between what's going on in your head and in your heart to reach another human being in a way that you are communing, you are really connected. What drives both of these, the thing that's the strongest determinant to the experience that you're creating for others, and the thing that almost everybody overlooks, is your state. The psychological and emotional condition that you're in when you're communicating is the strongest determinant to what you actually communicate and how you communicate it. So consider this. If you show up for a high-stakes situation and you're in an unresourceful state, you're tired, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're nervous, you're stressed out. As you go to reach for the ideas and formulate them, it's colored by your state. You're in an unresourceful state. Your ability to think has been compromised. It's like your brain is on dial-up. You can't download the information the way you would normally do it under an average circumstance. But as you go to deliver it, your voice, which is usually full of color, tends to flatten out. The pressure will flatten it out. Our hands, which have always known what to do, find themselves in weird places. We don't know what to do with them. They're shaking. Our eyes, which know they need to connect with other human beings in order to create a relationship, have found themselves looking at the floor. And as you look out, you see them looking back at you, disconnected, preoccupied on their phones. And if you were in a lousy state before, it just got worse. And you're in a vicious cycle. How many of you have been there, by the way? Good. At least you're all honest. Every once in a while, nobody puts their hand up. Come on. Conversely, if you show up and instead of anger, frustration, fear, fatigue, you have, let's call it intellectual generosity. Your state is one of giving away. You just can't wait to share what you've developed. You've got a sense of purpose. You've got some excitement. Maybe there are some butterflies, but you're breathing into it. When you show up in a resourceful state, naturally, it begins to color and change the way that you're thinking. And the delivery, of course, is supported by that state as well. So when you're showing up with generosity, your arms don't fold. They don't go in your pocket because you can't be generous. You can't be purposeful from this position. You don't ask, what do I do with my hands? You're preoccupied with changing the state of the listener or imparting some kind of a gift that's going to improve their condition. So, content delivery state. The interesting thing about this model is that if you pull out any leg in this triad, the engagement falls apart. You can have great ideas. You can have a beautiful voice, but if you're in a lousy state, what gets communicated is your anger or your fear or your stress. You can be in a great state, but if you don't have something to say, there's only so long that people can stand you cheerleading at them. There has to be some real meat on the bones. It requires all three. So what I'd like to do with you is maybe just touch upon all three of these and then take some of your questions and talk about some of the challenges and some of the techniques or workarounds. Does that sound okay? Yes or yes? All right, good. So I'd like to start with content. And the reason is this, that most of the time when I'm working with a senior executive or a leader, it's mostly fear that I'm working with. I don't know a single person who gets in front of a group when the stakes are high and doesn't begin to tremble a little bit. But here's what I've discovered after doing this for 25 years in 33 countries. Most of the fear is because they're not clear about their intention or their ideas. And once you clarify that, a lot of that fear starts to get grounded. There's an alarm system that sometimes goes off and says you shouldn't be up there. That's often what's going on because we're not prepared. But when the content is clear, your ability to deliver it goes up. So let me share with you a 5-step process for creating narrative. And in the back of the room, there are these cards. I call them blueprint cards. They're on the back thing with the soup. You can take one on the way out, and it's all there. 5 steps to creating content and for overcoming the 3 biggest problems that people have when they're listening. Let's do a quick study first. I love to do this. I want you to be brutally honest. If you were to take a month, an average month, and think about the percentage of time that you find yourself disengaging. You're in a conversation, you're on a conference call, you're in a class, and you notice that for the past 5 minutes you haven't really been there. I get this sometimes when I'm reading. I go through a whole chapter and go, I don't think I've been paying attention. What percentage of the time do you find yourself disengaging? And let's be clear, sometimes this is just self-preservation. There's so much brain damage going on, you just have to check out in order to preserve. But what would you, just on average, I know it depends on who's speaking and the time, but let me just get a couple of numbers. What would you say yours is percentage that you find yourself disconnecting? 30, yeah. I'll tell you what the international average is in just a moment. Everybody's the same here. Everybody's a third. Some others? She's going, what's the question? 75. Yeah, I got my eyes on you. Others? Percentage. Here's what the international average is. 55% of the time people say that they're not listening. They're really not listening. And conference calls even worse. Meetings even worse. And let's face it used to be sort of awkward and not really even acceptable, but now it's totally acceptable. You go ahead, I'm listening. No problem. Open it up. Yeah, I'm here. We just accept that nobody's really in the room anymore. So I always ask why. Here are the 3 biggest reasons that people consistently say they stop listening. Number 1, too much information. Most of us are just talking it to death, and we're saying the same thing 18 different times. Number 2, not relevant. It may be a great story, it may be concise, but you haven't positioned it in a way that makes sense to the listener. You haven't made it relevant to them. And number 3 is it's not clear. And it's usually not clear because the speaker failed to create a structure. Structure liberates. It liberates the speaker, but it also liberates the listener. The listener needs to know what the journey is going to be. Here are 5 steps that will help you, and you can do this in 30 seconds, or you can do it, you can take more time if you're doing a keynote. Number 1, determine what is your outcome. If the purpose of the talk is to improve the condition of the other, determine in advance what is the outcome. By the end of this speech, meeting, presentation, they will be reassured. They will greenlight the project. They will join the team. Get really clear what the outcome is that you're seeking to create, and if you can, upgrade it. Upgrade it to the heroic. And what I mean by that is, how are you improving the condition of the other person? It's a phenomenal quality about us humans that most of us will work much harder for somebody else than we will for ourselves. So when you find the purpose behind the talk, you find levels of energy, of courage, of perseverance that you didn't even know you had. So the outcome becomes a way of organizing, but it also is a way of stimulating or exciting yourself around the larger purpose of what you're about to do. And this doesn't have to be done in, this isn't a Nobel Peace Prize winning speech. It can be something quotidian. But what is the purpose? Number 2, why? Why should they care? And this is the hardest one, perhaps the most important. Most of us just begin speaking, but we don't ask, why would they be interested in this? Why does it matter to them? What's in it for them? What are some of the challenges that they're facing, and what are some of the aspirations? If you can't get clear about the why, they probably won't either. 3, what do they need to know in order for you to achieve the outcome? What knowledge do they have to have? Now, this is key. It's not, what do I want to tell them? That's the first place that most of us make the mistake. They fly me in all over the world. I sit down with these guys, they almost always say the same thing. They'll say, what I want to say, what I want to tell them, what I want to communicate. What do they need in order to thrive becomes the question, which is a subset of what you know. And that's one of the places that we fall into the trap of over-talking it. What do I want to talk about? And 4th, if you really want to be influential, do people make decisions strictly based on what they know, or do they make decisions based on what they know and what they feel? So we ask the question, what do they need to feel? in order to get the outcome. And finally, what's my point? In one sentence. What is the premise, theme, thesis? What is the basic idea? And what this does is it helps us overcome the three biggest obstacles. Number one, too much information. Well, we're asking what do they need to know, not what do I want to talk about. Two, not relevant. Well, we've asked ourselves why they should care. And we've come up with at least three reasons. And third is clarity. So by creating some kind of a structure around the know, what do they need to know? If you can create a structure of three, I'm not saying dumb it down. I am saying create a simple structure. If you want to talk about the history of the world, could you do it in 3 chapters? Could you? If you had a book and it was called The History of the World, could you do it in 3 chapters? Sure you could. You'd have a lot of subcategories in there. We might have the classical period, the Renaissance, and the modern period, depending on where we want to start. But you want to try to create, in a book you can go back and forth. In a talk, they want to know where you are. So there needs to be a structure of 3. So let me show you how this works when you build the architecture of a talk. In any given meeting or speech, there are going to be 3 parts, yes? There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. What's the most important? The beginning, the middle, or the end? What would you say? Beginning. Some ends over there. How many say beginning? How many say end? How many say middle? Look around the room. One guy put his hand up for middle. One person. Where do you spend most of your time when you're giving a speech or a presentation? And only one person said it's important, or most important. Now, the truth is you need all 3, but do we always make the distinction between beginning, middle, and end? So let's say beginning, middle, and end. Why are beginnings important, for those of you who said the beginning is important? Yeah, because there is no middle. In 50% of the cases, there is no middle. They're checked out already. They are gone. There is no middle. Now, how do most people open? Hi. I'm Peter Meyers, and I'm really excited to be here. I want to thank you, Ken. This is such a great opportunity, and I'm so happy to be back here again. A little bit about me and my background, and I'll tell you a little bit about Stand and Deliver and my book, about the culture of our organization, and then, then we'll talk about your thing. Anybody recognize that? I'm exaggerating a little bit. What's the question on the listener's mind when they sit down to listen to somebody speak? What's the question that everybody asks? Why am I here? Why should I care? I've got another 10,000 things to do. And if you can't answer that question in the first 10, 20 seconds, they check out. Now, fortunately, we did the homework. We said, why should they care? Why should they care? And that becomes your opening. There used to be a thing with open with a joke. I say never open with a joke unless A, you know you're funny, and B, it's a relevant joke. Otherwise, it just looks like you want everybody to like you. But if you open by being relevant right out of the gate, it changes everything. And one of the ways you do that is by changing the I-U ratio. So I can open up by saying, I'm really glad to be here and I'm excited and I love Cal, I love Berkeley, I love this town. Who cares? I might open up by saying, for all of you, whether you're an academic or whether you're in business, your ability to translate your ideas in the world is going to be one of the strongest determinants to your success. But most of us have the wiring wrong. So today what I'm going to do is share with you. So I've tried to frame something for a diverse, heterogeneous audience in a way that creates some stickiness right out of the gate. Everybody follow that? And we call that a ramp. The middle, why is the middle important? Since we only have one person, I can only, why is the middle important? Yeah. And what we want is for the middle to be a place where they make discoveries instead of getting lost. So the middle is about discoveries, and what you're taking are the 3 things, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm building a story. Maybe that structure is, I'm going to talk about where we were in the past, where we are now, where we're going. I might talk about, here's the problem, here's the solution, and here's what we're going to do to solve it. But some kind of a structure of 3 that gives the listener a sense of where we are. Underneath that structure, you can create nuance, and you can create subcategories if you need to. But we want to have 1, 2, 3. Why are endings important? About 40% of you raised your hand for the end. Why is that important? It's what they remember. They don't remember anything else? You're right. They don't. The ending pays disproportionate dividends on what people remember. We way overweight those last couple of minutes. And we do it when we listen, but we do it when we go to the movies. We do it when we read a book. We do it when we go to somebody's house. Think about going to the movies, and if you get a typical Hollywood movie, you open it up, it's car crashes and love scenes and more car crashes and love scenes and battles and fights. And if in the last 2 minutes the movie's disappointing and you walk out and somebody says, how was the movie? What do you say? Rip off. Don't waste your money. Forget it. You forgot you were happy 95% of the time. It was just the last couple of minutes. Think about the opposite experience. You go to the movies and nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. Think about some of your French films, huh? Nothing's happening. But right at the end, it all comes together. You walk out, people say, how was the film? What do you say? Great French film, man. You got to go see it. But what happens is we often get to the end, and what do we do with that last 2 or 3 minutes? We present a boring stuff. So let me tell you what I've already told you, right? And I think this is tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. If they're idiots, yeah. Or we get to the very end, we go, look, I've only got about 2 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions? And I say never leave Q&A to the very end. There's 3 big risks. The first is you're doing really well. If this is our outcome, we're trying to get here, I'm at this spot right here. We're trying to get to 9,000 feet. I'm at 8,000. I'm almost there. And if the ending pays disproportionate dividends on what they remember, the first risk is that you're doing great and you go, so does anybody have any questions? Just one? Anybody? Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's really been fun. But you've all seen this happen, yeah? Or you're doing great. You go, any questions? Here he comes. This guy has been waiting the whole time. Yeah, I have a couple of questions for you. And he doesn't have questions. He has an agenda. He's an assassin in the audience, and he's just been waiting. And even if you answer that question, he has 5 more. He's going to keep coming until you go, can we just take this offline? I'm kind of out of time, everybody. Thank you for coming. Or, any questions? Yeah, I have a question. How does this affect our parking spots? Are we going to still have the same parking spots? Did you hear anything I said? So you get the totally left field question. You want to have discussions. You want to have interaction. You want to have Q&A. Always. Just don't end on it. So there's a Q&A in here, but you save something for the very end, and I call it dessert. Save dessert for the very end. And what is dessert? But it is an illustration of your point. But it's in the form, ideally, of a story, an anecdote, something short, sweet, and sticky that illustrates the very point that you have been talking about. If I were to do a Bauhaus drawing of this, strong opening, organized into 3s, and end with a bang. End with something that touches the heart, if you can. And that can be in a conversation, it can be in a formal speech, it can be in a meeting. But find ways of ending. Now, I didn't invent that, by the way. If you start to look at human behavior, at the end of dinner, at the end of a meeting, at the end of almost anything, human beings return to the heart. We hug, we kiss, say, it's been so long, Charlie, I haven't seen you, we got to get together some more. We tend to say something emotional at the very end, which seals it. Everybody follow me on that? Back in the day when we used to write letters, you would have a closing paragraph that was usually a little warmer. Some people still write letters. So that's a basic content architecture. And again, this is in the back. So you can pick this up, and it's elaborated a little bit more in my book. I want to talk about the third part of this triad up there, which is state. How do you manage your state when the pressure is on? Would that be interesting for all of you? Yeah. So what we're not trying to do here is get over our nerves, which is sort of like playing not to lose. It's not about getting over your nerves. If you don't feel butterflies before you get up in front of a crowd, don't go up. Go to the hospital instead, because there's something wrong with you. You're always going to have the butterflies. But are you managing your emotions, or are your emotions managing you? So when I was a ski and tennis instructor, what I started to notice is that the top players, the top racers, weren't the best athletes. They weren't the most experienced. They didn't even have the best technique, but what they were able to do is manage their state under pressure. There were other athletes, but they just fell apart under the pressure. So there are 3 pathways to managing your state. And this has been culled from 35 years of studying with a lot of teachers and a lot of exploring at the Esalen Institute. A lot of this should make sense to you, though, and it's no longer way out there. I think this is core. So 3 pathways. The first is through your physiology. Your physiology changes your state in a heartbeat. I'm in the West Coast premiere of Oslo, the play that was at Lincoln Center, up at the Marin Theater Company. This is the West Coast premiere. And you'll see the actors before the performance. Everybody has a ritual, and they're dropping into state. Roger Federer gets to the tennis court an hour and a half early, and it's not to put the shorts on. It's to get into the right state. Opera singers, athletes, anybody that's coming up against a high-stakes situation knows how to drop in. So your physiology has 3 parts to it, too. The first is your posture. There are positions that if you go to, you can't feel certain emotions. It's very hard to feel joy from this place. Very hard to feel confident from this place. By the way, actors know this. If I have to play a nervous character, I just do nervous things, and I will start to feel nervousness. The second way is through my breath. There are infinitely many breathing patterns. So there's I can get myself into a nervous state simply by changing the breathing. I can also get myself into a calmer or more grounded state by changing my breathing. I want you to notice that when I change my state, yours changes with me. The mirror neurons kick in. You tend to take on the emotion of the speaker. So when, oh, you just fell for it too. I can't believe it. I'm doing it right in front of you. Fake theater trip. And then I stop breathing, and then you stop breathing too. If you've ever sat and listened to a lecture for like 20 minutes and you find you can't stay awake, part of the reason is that you stopped breathing. The speaker hasn't. There are people who talk like this and hold their breath. Notice how hard it is for you to breathe if I don't. And when I breathe, it changes your state. So your breathing pattern, your posture, and the 88 muscles in your face change your state in a heartbeat. Try this. Everybody stand up real quick. Real quick. Just try this with me. Nothing against pigeon-toed people. Just point your toes in like this. And I know it's bad form, but pick your fingernails. Just pick your fingernails. Make sure your hands are free. Take your torso, drop it down. Take all these facial muscles and let them sag. Nobody's looking at you. Don't worry. Barely breathe and look at the floor. Keep picking your fingernails. Barely breathe. Let your facial muscles sag to the floor. And I want you to try to think some happy thoughts. Notice how difficult it is. Don't smile. Don't smile. Just let those muscles sag to the floor. Barely breathe. Torso's down. Repeat after me. I am so confident. What's happening in your brain? Brain's going, liar. And I want you to notice how you feel right now. Now quickly shake that off. Well, what would happen if we stayed like that for a couple of minutes? What would happen? Some of us will get tired. Some of us will get depressed. Some people start to cry. Some people go into a grief reaction. Now, this is really important to understand. The brain doesn't know the difference between reality and fantasy. But the brain has to be consistent. So if I go into a pattern like this, the brain goes, it's a grief pattern, and it will start to secrete a set of neurotransmitters that are aligned with that. And by the way, think about the position that most of us are in throughout most of the day. Torso, eyes. I don't know why, I just feel kind of tired today. Try the opposite. Put your feet down on the ground like this. Sternum, lift, lift. Remember from your ballet class, gentlemen. Okay? Arms up in the air. Look up at the ceiling. Put a crazy-ass smile on your face. Just look up there. Lift up your eyebrows and jump up and down and laugh as much as you can. Really laugh. Really laugh. Look up there and say, I am so depressed. I just can't do it. If you look around the room, you know, like 100 people just got happy for no reason. For absolutely no reason. The world didn't change, but you changed your state. And I want you to notice how quickly it happens. So am I suggesting that before you give an important lecture or presentation, you go out in the hallway, put your arms up and down like this, and start jumping up and down like a lunatic? Yeah. Listen, if you can get 15% more performance out of your brain by jumping up and down and laughing for 10 seconds, wouldn't you do it? So state changes in a heartbeat, and the first pathway in is through your physiology. If you would, just turn to the person next to you and give them a high five and say, you are a genius. Give them a high five. Have a seat, if you would. Notice how much happier everybody got when they got a high five and somebody said, you're a genius. I'm telling you this stuff, it's all available for us. Second way is through the mind's eye. What you focus on becomes your reality. The problem is we are hardwired to focus on the negative. What you focus on becomes your reality. So if you ask somebody 5 minutes before they're about to go and give the talk of their lifetime what questions they're asking, you get stuff like, why me? Will I remember everything I'm supposed to say? Are they going to ask me tough questions? Are they going to find out that I'm really an imposter, that I'm not quite as smart as I am? And I want you to notice, this is classic. All of these questions will lead to negative answers. Will I remember all the things that I want to say? Will you remember it? Of course not. And the brain starts asking these questions and focusing on them. Will they ask me questions I don't know the answer to? Yeah, absolutely. Happens every time. Will the projector work? Probably not. Right? Are there people out there smarter than me running their own dialogue? Definitely. Always. Do they want your job? Mm-hmm. These seem like innocuous questions, but it's sort of like a ski racer asking herself before the gate opens up, will it hurt when my tibia snaps in half?
Ouch.
And that's a healthy brain. We are hardwired to scan the environment and look for danger. You've been asked to speak to 100 people. These are your best friends, your family, your mom is out there, your grandmother has come back, everybody, all the people who love you, except for one. In the third row, there's one guy. He's got a pinstripe suit on, a goatee, a clipboard, and a red pen. He's the critic. And you're not supposed to do this, but you do it anyway. You peek out from the side, you peek out from the proscenium, and you look around, and do you notice all the people who love you? Hi, Mom, Dad, Bobby. Do you notice all the people who is that where you put your focus?
No.
Where do you put your focus?
Pinstripe suit.
Yeah.
Red pen.
You focus on the one guy. The one guy. You not only focus on him, you go back and you get your zoom lens, and you zoom in on the dude. And as you zoom in on him, you delete everything else in the room. And we do it when we speak, and we do it in life. We are looking for the rattlesnake. We're looking for the saber-toothed tiger. Think of it like this. We had two sets of ancestors. One came out of the cave a long time ago and said, ooh. gonna be a beautiful day. Sun is out, birds are flying around, flowers are in bloom, I'm gonna go for a walk. But we're not the descendants of those ancestors. They're dead. They were eaten, they're gone. There were a second set of ancestors that popped their head out and went, ooh, it's gonna be a beautiful day. Is there anything out there that can eat me? And they scanned the environment and looked for snakes and tigers and anything else that was threatening until they saw one, went, I'm going back into my cave. And we've been doing it ever since. That overactive amygdala is part of the reason why people often show up with a fraction of who they are in these high-stakes situations, because they're scanning the environment for danger, and this is a completely unnatural thing to do. We don't have the biological apparatus to talk to more than one person at a time. You can't really talk to a crowd. You can have a conversation with one person. We haven't been doing this very long as a species. This is a brand new thing. So it requires a rewiring or an overwiring in the brain. You have to ask a different question. If you say, am I gonna remember everything, you're gonna get a negative answer. If you say, am I ready? What's the answer going to be, especially if you're an overachiever? No, you're not ready. You're never prepared. So you got to ask a better question. How do I know I'm ready? What's the best way to inspire them? How did I get to be so lucky? All of these questions have presuppositions built into them, which force the brain to go into a different filing system and focus on possibility rather than fear. Everybody get that? Mm-hmm. I just threw a whole lot at you, but the questions you ask determine what you focus on. Change the question, you change the focus. Change the focus and you get a very different state. High performers know how to manage this tripod that the mind's eye is on and know how to shift its direction. Last part of this is your beliefs. The way you feel at any given moment isn't determined by the events, but the story that you're telling yourself about the event. The story, the event is meaningless. It's the story that you're telling, the interpretation or the meaning that you're giving it, that brings on the emotion, whether it's positive or negative. For example, what's your belief, and this is a rhetorical question, what's your belief about drying up, which is a technical term for forgetting the words? What's your belief system about getting up here or getting into a high-stakes situation and you go blank? What does that mean? Everybody have a story about that? We have a guy on our team, Dan Klein, teaches at Stanford, and he teaches teaches improvisational theater. Dan's a professional improviser. He gets paid to make shit up. And he's really good at it. And his motto is never prepare. And I said to Dan, what's your belief about those moments when you completely go blank? And he smiles and goes, when I go blank, something wonderful is about to happen. But if you're a professional improviser, you have to have that belief system. But you want to make sure that you're taking a look at the beliefs that are driving your behavior. What's your belief about being seen, about being heard? What's your belief about sharing ideas, about leadership? What's your belief about the ideas? And make sure that your beliefs are aligned with your intentions, what you're actually trying to create. Often, when you go to travel internationally, I go to the thing, and they always say, Mr. Meyers, did you pack your own bags? Oh, I don't know, my mother packed them for me. What do you think? Yeah, I packed them. But you know what? We're all carrying baggage. And some of it packed by your mother and your father and Uncle Charlie and the church and the government. And you got to open it up and go, do I still believe this stuff? This stuff I'm carrying around. Gosh, I remember, wow. When I was in grammar school, they sent me to a speech therapist because I always had this deep voice. And they told me I didn't have a good voice. I don't believe that anymore. Doesn't fit. Here's another thing. My father gave this to me. It says, as soon as you find the keys to the locks, be careful, they change the locks, so keep learning. Still believe that, still works. Keep it. But often we're carrying around old beliefs from a different time in our life that served us then, that don't serve you anymore, and you've got to update them. You find yourself going into an irrational set of emotions. It's almost always a belief system, a BS system in your head that's creating it. It's not the event. And nowhere does this show up more often, more poignantly than when people have to get up to speak. So content, delivery, and state. We didn't talk a whole lot about delivery, but again, it's in the book there. I want to take a few questions in the time that we have. Questions about communicating, about dialogue, about conflict, about the times we're living in, about working on virtual platforms, whatever it is. Questions, thoughts? You sure? Yes.
What is your belief system on blinking?
My belief system is that I'm going to blank about every 3 sentences, first of all. About every 3 sentences, I lose my way. And the question is, how quickly can I find my path again? And my belief system is that when one blanks, it's usually a disruption. And it can be, as Dan said, a really exciting moment. But even if it isn't, I can always backtrack and go back a sentence and refine my path. And I think it makes it more real.
Hi. Great talk, by the way. I learned a bunch of stuff. Thank you. My question is about kind of not a particular setting or an audience, but just the general culture that we are in right now, where everything is soundbite sized and soundbite timed. And people's attention span seems to be rapidly shrinking from hours to minutes to seconds to fraction of a second, right? And that's a state that people seem to come in and be in all the time. As a speaker, how do you deal with that?
So how do you deal with a shortening attention span? The ramp. The ramp becomes more important than ever, especially on conference calls. You've got 30 seconds to set the scene and make it super relevant to everybody by asking, what could they stand to gain? What could they stand to lose? What's pressing on them? If you can use that ramp and be effective, you've got a half a shot at people staying with it. And the other is you've got to be much more concise. We have to be more disciplined about the amount of words that we're using. Other questions? Yes?
Do you have any technique for when you don't know when your speech is going to end? I know people looking to watch, but quite often I'm speaking to people, I don't know quite what time it is. Oh, well, now I have to go to my class. And so then I have to work to have it end quickly. You ever deal with this situation?
You mean where I don't know what time I'm supposed to end?
Right.
No. Usually I know what time it's going to be over. That's important to know, and you know, having access to the clock is good. Is there something deeper you're looking for there?
Well, it's an casual conversation. I run into somebody and talking, I don't know where they have to go at what time.
Oh, I see.
And so they have to excuse themselves. Then they have to run, wind up the conversation.
Yeah. You know what I do a lot when I call people? I go, do you have 5 minutes? Do you have 10 minutes? Do you have 15? Tell me what you've got. And so they say, I have 5 minutes, Peter. Good. So let's do this in 5 minutes. So I have a sense. Because I think I know what you're talking about. If you don't know how long it's going to be, how deep should the conversation go? Other questions? Yes?
So let's say it's a long talk, 45 minutes to an hour. You've got a good ramp. You're charged up. Everybody's with you. I have a question about the middle. People start drifting. They can't listen for that long. What techniques do you have for in the middle to bring them back?
Yeah, the maximum you have is about 18 minutes before you have to change it up. It's about 18 minutes, and that's if you're really good. You can hold them for 18 minutes before you have to tell a story. You've got to do an exercise, show a video. You've got to do a turn and talk, give people a chance to have a discussion about it. But very few people can hold an audience for 45 minutes. It's usually about, you want to look at it in 18-minute sections. Keep changing up the activity. Exactly. change, and the form wants to change as well. So stories can be super powerful if you sprinkle them throughout, and giving people an opportunity to have a conversation as well. Take a moment and reflect on that together, and I'd like to hear some of your thoughts. Other questions? Yes.
So with our shortening attention span and our sound bites, are you shortening your presentation times or to make them more concise? Like, should we be looking at not doing, like doing 30-minute meetings and just being done with it? Or...
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I'm shortening what used to take a page of writing. I'm doing in a half a page. But when I run programs, I still run them from 8:30 to 5:30, usually for 2 days in a row. And people say it goes by really fast because we're constantly getting them up on their feet doing stuff. But you have to be tighter. Yes.
We have time for one more question, Peter, and then you gotta live it up and take us out to the the closing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, a conference call where people are constantly jumping in and out, and you have a room like this, everyone's arrived, they're ready to start, or people want this. But when you're on a conference call, and people are diving in and thinking, how do you control that?
So how do you control a conference call where people are coming in and out? I don't have a good answer for you. If it's my company, everybody knows to show up on time, and we're really nuts about that. We say 9 o'clock is 9 o'clock. If it's the client, or if it's sometimes you got to bring them up. So what we've been chatting about so far is, and paraphrase it. Sometimes they have to leave early. But I think, like you, I'm improvising through all of that, and it depends on who it is, and we've sort of come to learn how to deal with all of those disruptions, and hopefully the people who really want the information will get it. But you have to keep paraphrasing and bringing them up. I think we have to wrap. Yeah. I'll stick around afterwards, though. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.